Welcome to Dr. Tom Meets. I'm Dr. Tom, former vascular surgery resident. I'm now the founder and CEO of Heidi, one of the world's leading AI companies in healthcare. And I'm joined by Christina Farr.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Farr. I am a health and technology writer with Second Opinion Media and an investor from New York City.
In Dr. Tom Meets, we're going to be talking to health system CEOs and tech leaders about how we should build the future at the intersection of health and tech.
So, Tom, today we've got as a guest Rebecca Mitchell, who is a physician. She is a product executive. She's also an investor with a firm called Scrub Capital, which I'm involved in as well, both of us GPs. She's our managing partner. And I feel like you two are just going to hit it off instantly because you both have this same product sensibility, passion about let's delight the user first. And Rebecca's kind of always sung that tune throughout her career. And you're also physicians. And I know you know her as well, right?
Yeah. I think it was in 2022. So I went to Health, the classic Vegas conference, and got to meet her at a dinner with lots of other product people. And I remember I felt like I was seeing like one of my own, if I ever needed,
spirit.
Yeah, it's like if I needed a product person, I'd love to have Rebecca in the team. So excited to talk to her.
Excellent. Let's bring her in.
Let's head over.
So I feel like I'm in the presence of two clinician builders and entrepreneurs, which is incredibly exciting because it's not that long ago that people would have said physicians, not necessarily the most entrepreneurial of humans, very hierarchical in the training, very much oriented around seniority and knowledge, and this is the way that we do things. So would love both of your perspectives on what has shifted to suddenly now I think we see a lot more clinicians feeling like they want to branch out and do entrepreneurship.
I would say, first of all, that many clinicians have always been very entrepreneurial. I mean, you look at historically, many of them built and ran their own practices, right? Like actually high incidence. It is where they are now applying that entrepreneurial energy and the degree of risk they are now willing to take on relative to the perceived and real scope of impact people can have that has really shifted. I first got into tech when I was going to medical school at UC San Francisco. Rock Health was getting started. Doximity was just started. The reason I was able to get jobs, get internships is because very few legit, established, experienced physicians were willing to go there during that time. And so they were really excited to have even a medical student that could come in and be like their bridge into the larger world of healthcare. Clearly that has massively changed. I always say you could not take the path that I took into what I'm doing now again. There are very qualified people already on that path. But really it took several cycles of people showing what was possible, including getting some things wrong. I think for clinicians to look at the situation and say, wait, I have incredible earned insights around this industry, around patients, around these problems. I have great ideas about how to pursue it. And I believe I can do this too, if not better than past efforts have been here. We have specific people like Tom Lee with Hippocrates, One Medical, now Galileo, Rushika, who I've gotten to know better recently. Chrissy's known for a long time and one of the OGs here with Iora and has a new startup. There are now actual figures people can look at and aspire to be, and they see how successful they've been, not just financially, but in real human and industry impact. I think that's incredibly inspiring to get people. It's like a new archetype that people going into medicine look at and go, okay, that's what I want to be someday.
And then speak to a little bit of the culture too, because you and I obviously very long time friends and colleagues, but we've both heard this pushback sometimes from friends in the industry say, oh, yes, medicine is hierarchical, but have you ever been involved with a code? Is it a code blue, a code red? It's whatever that code is, when a patient's dying and everybody's got to rush in and this team has just got to figure out what they need to do, oftentimes in a resource constrained environment to save this patient. And that actually could be a great parallel to what's going on in a startup. What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, look, clearly I'm betting my career, our careers really right now on the idea that clinicians make incredible entrepreneurs, incredible investors, business minds, technologists. Okay, I put it this way. Amazing founders are already few and far between. So I don't believe that every single clinician out there could be an incredible founder, in the same way that I don't believe, to take any category of person and say every person is an incredible founder. What I do believe is when you find somebody that has the characteristics that makes an excellent founder, and they have been trained and practiced and like dedicated their whole like lives to medicine, and you put those two things together, that's where you have a power law founder. And as a VC, right, that's the kind of person that we want to invest in. I will say, like on that specific kind of theme, I mean, Chrissy and I know who I'm thinking of here. I won't say it out loud, but like one of the people we heard this from first when we were starting Scrub Capital, and we're looking at collaborating with them or even bringing them in for an LP check, was someone insisting that, clinicians don't have great business minds, product minds. And I pointed out to them that a huge proportion of the most effective and important people in the business that we had built together actually were physicians or other types of clinicians. And the response was like, oh, no, not those specific individuals. I mean, in general, right? And so, but that's who we're talking about here, right? It's specific individuals that are willing to stick their necks out, have a concept, and they're willing to go build a business.
My analogy for this is because being a doctor in society and like in salary and everything is generally like a pretty good out in life, like it's pretty stable. Most of the time,
if you were dating somebody and that
Yeah.
person is a doctor,
You're like,
no
thumbs
mom
up.
ever is like, nope.
Yeah, it's like you did well. So if someone's willing to like leave that behind, kind of, especially if they're willing to burn the boats, like full on, like just
Yes,
like no like
yes.
foot in, foot out, like I'm all in, then you know that there has to be something that that everyone else doesn't. Like there has to be both like a risk-taking appetite, which is a good sign. Also, yeah, of course, earned insight. Like healthcare is really complicated. There's lots of data that like healthcare companies almost only work best when there's a healthcare founder, or at least founders in the team, because being a doctor is so good that this is what I always got asked. Like, why didn't you just finish surgical training? Why aren't you going to be a surgeon? Isn't that good enough for you? It's like, well, it's just not what I want to do. Like, I think this is going to change the world, and I think I can do it. So yeah, I think it's a good strategy, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I love what you said to you burning the boats. I actually have a journal entry that started with that at one point between, starting down this path. And I gotten far enough out from being in training where it really was a like, okay, this is the true like burn the boats moment. What was it for you where you said, okay, like now the boats are burned?
Yeah, so the way training works here, you have to get on to residency. So you're sort of like a generic junior doctor early on. And I kind of lined up everything to get onto vascular surgery training, which is very hard to get onto.
Yeah.
So I'd done like all my surgical anatomy exams, I'd done extra courses, like probably spent about $50,000 on stuff that I needed to become a surgeon. But for me, it was I realized like, look, if I reflect on my life, what am I going to regret most? And I thought I was definitely going to regret not having started that company in AI, because I just thought it was going to happen. So there was two moments. So one was leaving meant I wouldn't ever get onto vascular surgery training, because you can't really come back to that. So that was
Got
one.
it.
I was like burning half the boats. And then last year was the remainder when my license was going to expire. So I just let it expire. So I'm still a physician, but I'm not practicing. And yeah, I feel good about it. But part of me was like, do I just do like a locum shift a week, just as a backup? And just part of me was like, no, it's actually better if there's no backup. Like I have to make it work.
Tom, you kind of like went straight into it with founder life. Like you weren't like, I'm going to work my way up. I'll start, on a clinical team of a startup, and then maybe I'll move further up and then up. Like, how did you get the skills from medicine that you needed to like actually be the founder and CEO immediately?
Yeah, so I still got to do a bit of both. So during medical school, probably similar to you, Rebecca, I was studying, but also had part-time jobs and like other interests. And then I actually met the co-founders of Heidi at a tutoring business, so MCAT tutoring, like we're helping people get into medicine. And yeah, I never thought of it at the time, but now I reflect, it was like my entrepreneur boot camp. So, I built websites, we built, I wrote software, we did Facebook marketing, like kind of jack of all trades, like master of none.
Was that the hot cursor summer that you told me about?
No, that was this summer. This summer was like, that's changed my life. And so I just learned by doing, growing this small tutoring business, and it became pretty successful. And then I also realized that building business is really fun. My favorite part was seeing people we'd hire grow and do other things and go start their own things. Like actually our head of product now was someone I tutored at Fraser's, who then did medical school and then we kind of like, you know, became close friends. And then he was like, well, I really like what you do at Fraser's. Like, and then when I started the business, I was like, why don't you just join? Like, we'll figure it out. And now he leads product and has, I don't know, 10 PMs reporting to him. It's crazy.
I agree that it's fun, but it's also an uphill battle.
Oh,
and
for sure.
the amount of rejection and failure.
Type 2 fun, is that what it is?
It's type 2. So how did you, once you both had burned the boats, how did you get comfortable with knowing that everything from that point onwards was going to be just riddled with a lot of challenges, and sometimes it can feel like one step forward, two steps back, versus the path where it was going to be hard, but you knew that if you did X amount of years of training, that you could get to this level, and then that amount of income would be unlocked. How did you get comfortable with that style of living? And would love to hear your thoughts now as a founder of a fund too.
Well, I will say, I mean, fairly, life was not very comfortable at the point when I made that transition, right? I had tons of medical school debt. Like, I hadn't had a high income in a really long time, a little bit before medical school. And so it was more of, okay, I've been living in this way for a while. Like, this is fine. We'll just persist. I know how to do this. It was really like later in my career when I started to make real money, and had real authority and real vacations and benefits and all these things, going back and starting the firm together with you, Chrissy, when that change occurred again. And I think that probably gave me more empathy for what a lot of people who decide to diversify their career or, like, you know, completely jump experience in medicine. Because look, I have 5 kids. I live in the Bay Area, incredibly expensive, right? We've tried to manage lifestyle creep, but of course it's real. That's a real thing. And I think that the advice I'd give to people is to be incredibly clear-eyed, what kind of baggage, both good baggage, right? And perhaps some that you wouldn't have intentionally picked up if you thought through, hey, maybe at some point, like, I do want to take a career risk again and deal to live on a ramen salary for a little while, or at least not worry about all of this upkeep. Like, I think too many people don't think that through, and it is very limiting.
And Tom, you must have also had similar challenges where you're starting a new company, you're in Australia, it's in healthcare.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that investors were lined up around the corner saying, here's $20 million.
No, not at all. So yeah, when I met Rebecca that year, I went, so it was like a US tour, and I was trying to figure out, like, how does US healthcare work? Seems complicated. I don't understand all of it, but I understand more now. And yeah, I just couldn't get a meeting with anyone. Like, no one would give me the time of day, because we had some maybe 1 or 2 early US customers, but it just wasn't really working. And it's like, yeah, healthcare is hard, and then investors really understand the US healthcare system. And now I have this like random Australian telling me about how everywhere's going to use AI, and, like, you know, there's no competition. And anyway, so it was really hard. Actually, even for our A, like, we were doing so well, and it was, you know, like parabolic. Like, I knew the company was going to do so well, but even then, I couldn't get anyone to believe in the business, mainly because it was product led, and that idea in the US was just like incompatible with healthcare. It's like, so
Healthcare, yeah.
So like, what do you mean you just go to the doctors? Isn't that like a compliance risk? Are you going to get sued? Anyway, so yeah, it definitely wasn't easy, but I feel like you have to be an eternal optimist, and
Yeah.
because if you take the beating hard, then you just won't survive.
Yeah. Tom, I remember people believing in you when they met you, though.
Yeah.
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, force of will, you know, happy, smiley,
Yeah.
but like really pushing.
And meaningful, you got Rebecca in the room, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you and I debate quite a bit, Rebecca, the PLG, product-led growth strategy in healthcare, because it's definitely had some mixed results. But I would imagine that AI gives PLG a little bit of a potential lift, that you can start with a product that physicians love and then figure out the monetization down the line. But historically, a lot of these businesses that we've spent time with have gone first to what is the sale to a large enterprise buyer, whether it be a health system or a payer. And then you have to have a business that can execute on that. You both in terms of the funding required. You know, these health systems, you know, are telling us, at least the ones in the US, say, well, look and see how much funding does this business have, because the 3-year timeline
Yeah.
that it takes, if you run out of money, in that timeline, that's it, right? And they want to know that you have a team that can staff these really heavy compliance and implementation processes. And that's just the health system, not to mention the payer. So very often the buyer is the primary kind of motivation of what's driving the company forward, and not necessarily the individual user that may be a physician or maybe a patient. Rebecca, do you think that there is now an opening for more product-led growth companies in healthcare?
Yes, but you need, like any company, right? Like, you have to choose your go-to-market really carefully and sequence your go-to-market really carefully. And this existed well before the thing that we're currently calling AI and Gen AI, like Tomley and Hippocrates, right? Like Chuck Tagany was part of that company, and they then created Doximity. Like, these companies really showed what was possible when it came to product-led growth. That back when I was maybe studying for my MCAT, if not, like even like examinations before that. And so that has always been an opportunity in healthcare. If you were building for clinicians, particularly physicians here as end users, if you had an interim smart way of really capitalizing on those eyeballs and the attention, often through working with pharma, often through ads, which I know can be a touchy subject for some people. And it's something we're navigating now in some of the current companies. And you understand how to use that product love and usage in a way to exert friendly pressure and a sense of inevitability on those enterprise clients when it comes time to formalize the relationship. And often what it looks like is, okay, wait, like 80% of our staff are using this already. Our reaction is to be able to have some level of control over what is not currently controllable, and then the contracts will come. And you need to be careful, right, that you don't get yourself into a situation where your business model is then oil and water with who then needs to buy you at a health system or whatever it is. And I mean, I think some of the companies right now actually that have been pursuing product-led growth motions are in a bit of a sticky situation because they've gone a little beyond where their enterprise companies are comfortable, right, in terms of particularly like ads and where they show up in the product. So it'll be interesting to see, right, if the Overton window there shifts and that becomes acceptable, or that leads those businesses to choose an alternative.
Interesting. Yeah. So again, this is just my 1 foot deep, but I just think PLG doesn't work in the US like at all. It does, and it has for us, but I think we're like an edge case because it has to be something so good that a doctor or whoever your end user is, let's say it could be like a nurse or someone, like I saw an interesting one that's doing PLG for ordering medical supplies. It's just like an easier way to do it. But then they take a clip of the order and then they kind of like bootstrapping their way into all these different hospitals because people are just like, I just have to order, masks. And then they look up on the web and they've got this amazing SEO strategy and they find them. But these feel like tricks, not like the main go-to-market strategy for most, I think, because what we've found is that in the world, it's really good. In the US, the employer model just means that any individual decision maker is so far away from the people that ultimately make the decision. And sadly, they don't really care about what's happening down at the bottom. They just view it as like, oh, shadow IT, like, they're just, it must be random tools not built for us.
I violently agree with you, which is why it has to be both applied to the right company, but it also has to be a team that like really can execute on extraordinarily like user-centered design and development. And what I observe is that people try product-led growth when they've built what is already basically an enterprise product where they're like really trying to optimize for somebody else. And then it absolutely does not work, right? And so I bet if we like put them into the different categories, we'd find that as like the defining feature.
Yeah, because they're a bit incompatible in a way. Like you have to pick who you're optimizing for. Like we have the same problem. So if we do, let's say, an enterprise sale, you do all of the cost of making that sale. If we didn't have any product-led bottoms-up adoption, the cost is really high. So the price you would have to charge would have to be, let's say, like $3,000-$4,000 per clinician per year, roughly. But no one would self-serve that. That's way too much. So then the self-service price ends up being maybe, let's say, 1,000 roughly is like acceptable. So then you have this gap. It's like, well, who do you optimize for? Do you want people to sign up for themselves, or are you optimizing for sales? luckily for us, it kind of like the PLG kind of lubricates the sales, so we don't need as much of a sales team,
Yeah.
and we get more inbound, and so the maths like shakes out. But my feeling is like we're kind of lucky more than strategic, honestly. Like it was a good strategy, and I was surprised how well it worked in the US. But I think it's because like just scribing as a category was so popular, doctors were looking for it. But now
And then scribing has this really unique aspect to it too, that a lot of startups that we've all spent time with are solving non-essential problems. Like they are real problems, but if you are a health system, there's only a few things right now where it's sort of a drop everything hair on fire problem.
Yeah.
And physician burnout and staffing shortages and, really all that is a hair on fire problem. So I think scribing sits in quite a unique place, whether it be your company or any of the scribing companies out there. And that makes the sort of exceptionality maybe thesis that you have more plausible. And I wonder about everything else that we're seeing in AI. Is it solving a problem that is so mission critical where, it's at this point in time when, health systems right now are facing an incredible amount of uncertainty, at least in the US, whether or not it rises even to that level of attention.
Most companies that we see, they're trying to solve a mission critical problem. The challenge is it's often not the mission critical problem for the person who's actually set up to pay for the product, right? And it's what you said a few minutes ago, Tom. Like it's that mismatch, and it's people trying to figure out like how to triangulate across these different stakeholders to like serve a need and get paid for it, right? That's the gap that I see more, and that has always existed, like pre AI.
I'm interested, maybe it's a bit random sidebar, but in the places you worked before becoming a VC, how did you guys do acquisition of customers? Like, was it more B2B or employer selling, or what were the different models that you've seen?
So the environments that I worked in were pretty much all B2B to C, across pretty much every single market channel in the United States, from working directly with medium to large health systems. I was part of Livongo, and we, of course, initially focused on employers to start and then expanded from there into other markets.
Livongo was, just so everybody knows, like the big success story in digital health and sold for around
one of the few, right?
$18.5 billion. But carry on a record. I just wanted to do some stage setting.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Chrissy knows I talking about these things up. Look, I would say across all of them, like they shared this, there was for sure an enterprise sales motion, but I tended to pick companies where I felt that what made it work for that enterprise buyer was as close as possible to maybe not everything, but what was most important to the patient, the member, the user, whatever the company was calling it. And where that individual, the patient, them loving the product, wanting to use it, continuing to use it, maybe couldn't apply like product-led growth as pressure onto the situation, but it could absolutely apply product and contract retention pressure onto the situation. And I mean, like using Livongo as an example, like one of the reasons we really emerged as one of the high growth company in that category was the team was so incredibly talented at developing channel partnerships and like getting us sold on their paper, right? Like CVS being one of the best examples of this. Being I was on the phone call where many years later, CVS delivered the news that they wanted to change the partnership and pay very differently for like certain patients versus others based upon how much money could be saved in one calendar year versus over time. Because we're really talking about people who are already quite sick versus people who are getting sick or were not yet sick, right? And we all know that's like challenging to show near-term ROI on those second and third categories. And without going into all kinds of gory detail, like the majority of those contracts were retained that had happened via that channel partnership because of the utter flip out and pressure that ensued when the idea of losing this benefit and program became apparent, both at the company level and then like when word would get out beyond that. And I hear similar things about like the silver sneakers program. Like whenever anybody considers trying something else, like people come at them with pitchforks, like don't you dare get rid of this. So there is real pressure, like patients or employees like can put on this situation, even if it's not part of the initial sale, to try to keep that aligned over time.
I wrote a book on this, so I might be a little bit biased, but I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling. And I think in healthcare, there haven't been too many great examples of phenomenal storytellers who've really captivated the press's attention, the attention of the patient, the provider. And I think you've worked at one of the companies, Rebecca, that did have a very good storyteller, a gentleman by the name of Glenn Tolman, who was the CEO of Livongo. But we've also surrounded ourselves at Scrub Capital, the venture firm that we've been building, with some of these great storytellers as well. And we've invested in some of them. So I think there is a thesis around this that, I've never really formalized, but I think there's something there around, if you can just find these great storytellers, then I think it's my belief that you can be half as successful and still be and still do very well, because storytelling is such a good catalyst for everything else. And, I think it's oftentimes associated with just public relations or marketing, but a good storyteller CEO can recruit easier, they can sell easier. Almost everything within the function of the business gets easier. It's also obviously catnip to investors, which we can talk about. But Tom, would love your reflections on that and any great storytellers that have inspired you and how much you've internalized that as a founder.
I don't know how good I am. I try. Most of the first customers at some sort of evangelical sell, like they're really picking you because, one, they should like you. Two, they feel like that you're going to help them in some way and like maybe drag their business into some new way of operating or something, pretty much through force of will. It's the same for the first employees. They're betting their career on you. You're going to tell them a bunch of stories and make a lot of promises, and that really works until those promises have to come true. But I feel like it's like it gains momentum. Like every time you keep your promises, then they tell their friends that like, oh yeah, like, I quit my job and I joined and it's been so good and you should join. And it's sort of like the layers of the onion grow. So I do agree, like that early, they have to be like irrationally confident in themselves. Otherwise they're just not going to make it. And I think that what you were saying earlier, Rebecca, about like kind of creating viral adoption, great stories generate word of mouth as well. So I think that's what I boil it down to. Like, how do you create word of mouth? It doesn't really matter on your motion. Just like you need 1 to go to 2, to go to 3. You can do whatever you like. You can have great ads, but like ultimately it's about word of mouth. Good stories are great until they're bullshit. So there's always like some balance, I think, of like, yeah, is this someone just a liar, a charlatan, or they actually know what they're talking about? But I don't know.
I had a whole chapter in my book about this where we just looked at all the charlatans, and my actual conclusion was, people like Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. I never thought she was a great storyteller because she wasn't very authentic.
Yeah,
she was trying to be Steve Jobs, and to me that was the immediate flag. I would always choose a founder that just, even if they're extremely peculiar,
their own vibes.
It's who they are, right? Yeah. Like they're just owning the oddness, right?
I can affirm Chrissy likes the odd, peculiar, I don't know, unique ones. in our GP
crazy
chats.
A little bit of crazy.
She does. What is it that allows somebody to become a good storyteller? Like, it requires a lot of things that make people great product visionaries and salespeople too, right? So a lot of those things are shared. Like, do you truly understand the problem that you're solving and the people you are solving it for? Like, do you have something truly unique and inspirational to say and a plan like that's viable to execute against it? Like, it's very hard to have a good story that's anything other than surface level, right? Unless you have all those other pieces. Like, you need other storytellers in your organization, but like applied through a function to succeed as a business over time, right? Like, game recognizes and wants to be like part of game. So like, look at Glenn was an incredible storyteller to the market and our investors and like internally, but like Jenny Schneider and Amar Kendall and like people in product marketing, like they were having to tell stories every day to different groups that often looked very, very different to this story than the story that, Glenn was telling more broadly to the market. And I often see that if you don't have that person at the top that's strong, like that weakness will then appear across the entire organization.
I think it's a trickle down, and it gives permission. When the CEO is a good storyteller, it tells everybody else within the organization, you can be too. And I love what you brought up with, say, a Jenny Schneider, who was the chief medical officer. She might tell the story through a clinical lens, which is a very different kind of story than one that Glenn might tell, which as a CEO, he could tell through a business lens, but then also tell through the lens of a parent of a child that had diabetes, which is the very condition that he was looking to solve. So I think that's so right, that like it starts with the founder, the CEO, and then if you can tick that box, it just can permeate through the whole organization. And then you've just got, instead of one person getting the word out, it's everybody. And like you said, that's where it starts to just gather a lot of momentum.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I totally agree with the product point as well, because the best storytellers is sort of, they're like, it's some magic art of like listening to what people are saying to you, but then also like reading their body language and their intuition and like saying what you think they need to hear, not necessarily what you actually want to say to them yet. And product is similar. Like it's like tasting from all these different bits of feedback, maybe from like your own intuitions. And it's quite hard to scale, but there are people you can find who have the same like, I guess, taste as you do. It's very, like, it's not project management. I think that's what people get wrong with product. It's like, it's different. It's not the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Like, you can like sort everything out, but that's not like, it's not going to make something magical. Yeah, so I think it's important. Like I would look for storytellers in if I was investing in companies. And yeah, if they've got that like thing, then that's like, maybe half the way there. They just have to figure out how to execute it.
I'll say that the last thing I would add to this topic is, Chrissy, you said just a moment ago, like the best storytellers, you find that it's radiating it out within the organization. One thing that I'm definitely seeing right now that is less to do with AI and more just what is like happening more broadly in our society is some of the most successful founders, investors. They're people who can get their story to be repeated by individuals who are well outside of their immediate business. And I use actually Scrub Capital as a great example here, not because I want to like inject, talking up the firm anywhere I can, but, we were just at JP Morgan, and what was astonishing to me was how often I heard our story being told by other people in the room, right? Or had people approaching me saying the story was told in some other environment. And it's often people who are part of our larger community or that are just aware of it in the ecosystem. So I am increasingly developing a thesis on that too, as a signal, and not a hype-based story, but a mission alignment, like belief sort of, we want this entity or a person to be successful, repetition of the story.
So just to maybe take us a little bit full circle on this, because you mentioned Scrub, we've been talking about Heidi, AI. I'm just increasingly believing these days that clinicians, getting them involved in the entrepreneurship side of the world, which may not be their lane necessarily, and it may not be all clinicians, but I think the subset that really want to be the builders and get involved, I think it's just crucial on a global scale to get these clinicians more of these opportunities, because I think we gave the finance and consulting types opportunity to fix healthcare. And what happened was costs went up and a lot of things got pushed on physicians that made their lives worse. And it feels like we're in this moment now where all these clinicians are starting to say enough is enough and wanting to build the next generation of tools themselves with that mission, with that North Star of let's make it fun again and purpose-driven again to be a clinician. And not just that, but then think about the system level and how do we fix all these incentives that have gone so wrong?
Yeah, I agree. I think because I see a lot of healthcare businesses where it's almost like someone discovered like a glitch and they're going to create some arbitrage and like monetize said glitch up to some point. Like my favorite one is I was at JPM as well, and I saw a company who basically reads notes and chases referrals. So if you got referred to a respiratory doctor and you didn't go see that respiratory doctor because maybe the patient's pneumonia got better, but whatever, then that company chases the referral and they take a clip of the extra visits they generate for the health system. It's like great business, but like, is it good for anyone? Like sort of, I guess. Maybe there's some patients who really needed to see the referral in the optimistic version, but in the negative version, it's like maybe that patient just didn't need to spend that money on that visit. Whereas, yeah, I think with when a doctor builds a company, I do think there's like some purity to it generally. Like they have to face the reality of what the business models are and how they make their company survive, but they kind of don't run out of ideas in the same way. like I see it in our category, the non-clinician founders they haven't done anything beyond the initial scribe that's like truly compelling. Whereas like my problem is like flight of ideas. Like I have like too many things, and I don't know like which to prioritize and like what makes sense. And like just being precise is my problem. And I do think in healthcare that's like a rare thing. Like most of the non-medical founders have like figured something out, but that's it.
They got the MBA, they did the PowerPoint
Yeah.
presentation,
then
they
I
found a
guess-
big market.
And I guess their VCs are like, oh yeah, just like hire someone in for product. But to Rebecca's point, like it's really hard. Like you have to scale the founder's own like aspiration. I think it's very hard to outsource that thinking because they're going to kind of adopt their leader's perspective on how to do product, and it just doesn't end up. I don't know. I can't think of one company where that product leader was with a founder who's just like not at all good at it, and they magically fix the company. It's a bit rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our favorite company type to kind of, I'll say it, like kind of make fun of behind the scenes and like the product Slack groups I'm still part of, are when two people with no product abilities try to hire like a new head of product 4 years in.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you're like, no, actually, like you want me to fix your business for like 0.25 per, points of equity? Like, no, I don't think so. And these are going around like a lot over the last few years.
Do you find some clinicians are maybe looking for like a guideline or a playbook or like a textbook? That's like maybe the one negative thing I've seen hiring, because we've hired a lot of doctors. I usually say like I'm solely responsible for taking more people out of medicine than most people I know, but probably for good. But yeah, like what is there a consistent like pattern or personality that you see of like maybe it's like the surgical types or like the ones that like maybe like slightly don't really believe in the rules, or is that just my own bias? What
And
do you guys
maybe
think?
Rebecca too, just give us a little bit of an update on the community itself and
Yeah,
who, who's in it and how that all works, because I think that'll be really useful to getting into the details around who's spiking within the medical profession as a entrepreneur, because we've definitely seen
Yeah,
those
want to hear
trends.
more about it? Go for it.
Yeah. People who are pursuing this for more agency and impact are generally the ones that are highest potential, not people that are pursuing this to run away. But I in no way feel that I run away from medicine. I feel that I'm doing it in a different way that I didn't even understand existed when I was 9 years old and first told my parents, right, that I wanted to be a doctor. And the best of the best still think of it in that way, right? And the risk they're taking is starting to do that work in a non-traditional, not always broadly supported by their peers, right? Context. And look, I think people in both categories end up looking for something like a how-to guide, like what can I read? What can I do to learn how to do this? And the good ones like sort of they'll look at that and say, oh, this is like a crutch to take the first leap. And then like they're off to the races. For others, they hope there's a structured path forever. And that's just like not realistic in many like careers and industries, not just tech. But okay, so for Scrub, Scrub is a venture firm, but we really think about our work as both investing in high potential, strong, venture backable startups at the early stage. But we also really think about our work is investing in these clinician polymath, right, risk takers as a fund and a firm. And I don't mean in the sense that, we're writing checks directly to those individuals, but, we're investing in them, learning about diversity of career opportunities. Some are going out of their current context full time, but many are not, right? It's like very, very fractional. It's a few hours a week. It's part-time where they can continue to straddle both worlds if that's what they want to do. It's investing in ensuring that their voices and perspectives are heard and how capital is actually allocated. So we have a very structured, very transparent process at our firm for how we are bringing in, for the average investment opportunity, it's somewhere between like 30 and 60 people from this now 1,000-member community are weighing in on everything that we look at seriously. And not only from a, like, is this medically sound? Like, will this fit in my workflow? But these are people who are fully equipped to evaluate it from, like the go-to-market motion, like the larger opportunity in the market, because they've built in those areas or they're a leader in that given market. We're constantly finding, situations where somebody's showing up for a particular, investment pitch. And after the founder leaves it like, oh yeah, we use this in my practice. And let me tell you exactly how it's going, and what I think of this and what the sales process looked like, and how well they did. So it's really creating a model that can ensure those voices are heard, their capital can participate if they want to participate, though they don't have to in our model. And then, ensuring examples, structured training and opportunities are put in front of those folks as much as possible so that when they are ready to engage, whether it's just learning about it, right, whether it's testing the waters or something even more substantial, we can be there to be a helping hand. And it's each other too, right? I mean, what I love about the group is seeing how people are constantly encouraging each other, right? Whether it's just more emotionally, right, in coaching, or it's like with practical, tools in the way that just like the firm is trying to do. And I'll say like one of the things that made me proudest that I heard one of our early LPs and clinician members of the community say is like, this has now become my professional home. And it's a space where I can have these ideas and have this ambition, and everybody celebrates it. They don't immediately question it.
So good. Yeah. It's sort of like they're like on the edge and you guys give them, I was going to say parachute, but maybe like a jetpack. I think having clinicians would definitely filter out like maybe 20% of the worst ideas. Like that was the thing with the drop of blood startups. I was like, but what happens if I like make a fist and like pump my hand? Like it's going to stuff up all the blood results. Like how do you deal with that? And never had a good answer. I was like, red flag. I would never invest. It's like, how do you deal with it not being central and peripheral? Sales team never heard of that concept. Bad news. I'm out. Yeah.
And you would assume that work gets done in the process of diligencing these companies, but you might be wrong in making that assumption. Very often clinicians are not asked, and that's where you all can sit there with gobsmacked thinking, how was this thing just given millions upon millions of dollars? And if anybody was asked, it was somebody who's like super senior and part of an expert network and not necessarily on the front lines. So maybe it was the wrong question and the wrong subject, where I think something like this where you've got every specialty represented, it's not just physicians, it's clinicians, like there are going to be 20 people who will have a perspective on any given company. And sometimes the founders will say, wow, I didn't even know this myself. So I think it's, it could be a new way of doing it. And it's, Rebecca and I often say it's clinician powered investing, which really hasn't existed so far to our knowledge. So I think with groups like Scrub, with companies like Heidi started by a physician, like this is why I'm so excited. We could be entering into a completely new era of healthcare entrepreneurship with the people that are the providers of care now becoming the builders. And that excites me so much.
And maybe to call back to what you said, Rebecca, I really think that those clinicians that are doing the building, they're helping the companies build stuff that is closer to value for the end user. So then, maybe you guys won't end up investing in the health system hack company, but at least the ones that work are probably doing good. So there's like a social good, and then also I just hope that the stuff that's good for end users ultimately wins. Like that's my dream. That's what I obsess about. And yeah, you just find better product companies, which I think makes a lot of sense.
What if we had real product companies in healthcare? Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
More than a handful.
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting there. It's slow, but it's happening. Well, thank you, Rebecca. It's been a real pleasure having you join us. Always good talking with you. And I'll speak for myself and just say I feel so inspired leaving this discussion.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming, Rebecca. And yeah, I'll catch up with you guys when I'm in the States again.
Would love that. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Dr. Tom Meets.
Until next time, please like, subscribe, and you'll find everything about the podcast on heidihealth.com/podcast. In each of the show notes, you'll find the details to connect with the hosts, ourselves, Christina, and also everyone we had on the show. And until next time, thanks so much.